Ukrainian police say more than 900 bodies have been recovered in the area around Kyiv following the withdrawal of Russian troops. Police said most of the dead civilians had been shot, an indication that many may have been executed. The bodies were found abandoned in the streets or in temporary burials. The number of dead is double that announced by Ukrainian authorities almost 2 weeks ago. And here's the head of Kyiv's regional police force.
I also want to say that Bucha has the most significant number of victims. This suggests that the occupiers, the units that operated in Bucha, were the most brutal. The most victims were found in Bucha, where there are more than 350 corpses.
DW's Rebecca Ritters is in the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv. Rebecca, gruesome news continues to come from Bucha, and you went there. How are people coping?
Yeah, Monica, Bucha really bore the brunt of some of the worst atrocities we've seen, at least in the Kyiv region. We were there yesterday, as you say, and talking to people who've survived that horrific occupation. They're clearly shell-shocked, as you can imagine. I mean, people there trying to get on with their lives, but obviously finding that very difficult. Something that surprised me was how quickly that city is being cleaned up. The scenes that we saw of all those burnt-out tankers and the munitions in the street, that has all almost gone. Obviously, the buildings are still destroyed. All the shops are burnt out and looted, and many of the houses are destroyed too. But the streets itself have been cleared up and the bodies counted and collected. We spoke to people. One gentleman showed me in the backyard in a makeshift grave where that they had dug for his wife's cousin. The body has now been exhumed, and just yesterday they were on the way to give him a proper burial. These people have been through the most horrific instances, as you can imagine, and people are trying to pick up the pieces of their lives, but so many destroyed. The scars on that city are going to remain for some time yet.
Yeah, and of course Russian troops have only just recently retreated from areas around Kyiv, and now Moscow is already threatening to target the city again. Have there been strikes since?
Ukraine is preparing for renewed strikes on the capital, as you say. Yesterday saw a strike on a munitions factory about 15 kilometres from where I'm standing right now. And this morning, Mayor Vitaly Klitschko has announced that there were also some attacks on the left bank of the city. Kyiv is cut in two by the Dnieper River, and on the left bank in a suburban area there were some attacks in the early hours of the morning. Apparently details yet to emerge of what exactly was the target there or whether there were any casualties. And the sirens have been sounding overnight, early this morning, and even not long before we came to air. So definitely a city that is preparing. But, you know, I don't know whether you can see behind me, I'm standing right near Maidan Square. There are sort of people trying to get on with their lives here as well as best they can. You know, we are starting to see people out on the streets, some restaurants reopening, some non-essential shops. It is definitely not anything like normal here in the capital, but people trying to get on with their lives despite the situation going on. But definitely a city that is preparing for potential renewed attacks in retaliation for certain attacks by the Ukrainian side, namely a Russian warship that was sunk in the Black Sea.
And something that Russia denies that it actually was done by Ukrainian forces. The Pentagon seems to think differently.
That's right. Ukraine came out and said that sea ship, that tanker ship, was actually sunk by their rockets. Something that Russia said no, it was a fire on board, and that lit up the munitions and it sank it. It did. Russia has actually said that the ship has sunk, so they've agreed to that, but they didn't. They deny that it comes from Ukrainian attack. But the Pentagon has actually supported that and said that yes, it was indeed a Ukrainian attack that sunk that ship. So that's definitely a boost for the Ukrainian side, but something that will obviously see retaliation from the Russians.
Right. Rebecca Ritters reporting for us from Kyiv. Thank you so much, Rebecca. Take care.
Well, for more, I'm now joined by DW correspondent Jan-Philipp Scholz. Jan-Philipp, in the areas around Kyiv where we've seen Russian troops leave already, now there's been more evidence of atrocities being committed. You've been to the area. Tell us what you witnessed there.
Yeah, we visited Makariv, a small town in the Kyiv region, and we saw horrible pictures. We saw incredible human suffering. People in the village told us that they saw Russians shooting their neighbors on the streets, and just more than 130 people at least were killed, according to the mayor. Let's have a look at the report.
It's hard to believe that there is still human life among all the destruction. Vasil and his wife Natalia were at home when Russian troops took over Makariv in late February. One morning, soldiers came to their house and accused Vasil of taking pictures. They tied him up and left him outside in his tool shed.
It was very cold, especially at night. The worst that I had no idea what happened to my wife. One day, a soldier came and brought me my special medicine. This was the moment when I understood that my wife was alive.
Everywhere it's a similar picture. Neighbors of Vasil and Natalia tell us that in this neighborhood alone, Russian soldiers killed 53 people. A 17-year-old girl was allegedly raped. For weeks, the family had to hide in this small basement room, always fearing that they could be the next target. It's hard to imagine a place with more destruction and with more human suffering than here in Makariv. The town of Bucha has become a worldwide symbol of Russia's war crimes, but it becomes more and more apparent that there are many more Buchas all across Ukraine. Igor worked as a teacher in Makariv before the war started. Now he walks through the town distributing donated medicine. Often he only finds empty ruins. 90% of Makariv's residents have left or been killed. Igor's friends used to live in this house. He doesn't know what has become of them.
We used to have a calm and peaceful life here. This family was just renovating their house. They were constructing a little summer cottage in their backyard. Over there you see the kindergarten. What happened to all of it?
Nearby, Igor has more success. He finds an elderly man who still lives amongst all the destruction. He has hardly left the house since the attacks began. Russian soldiers shot one of his neighbors on the street.
They asked, "What are you digging here?" He said, "A grave for my dog." They told him, "This is your grave now," and they just shot him.
3 weeks ago, Makariv was liberated by the Ukrainian army. Since then, many volunteers have come to help with the cleanup work. But the gruesome memories of the survivors will probably stay with them forever.